Hey, welcome. This is George Goyer, and today we're going to be mixing drums with the SSL console. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment. If you'd like to see specific types of videos or any topics that you'd like me to discuss, please make sure to leave a comment and let me know what you'd like to see. Make sure to subscribe, make sure to like this video, and we'll start mixing drums. What we have here in this session is all these red channels are my drums. We have the kick and the kick sub. We have a snare top, snare bottom. We have a hi-hat. We have two tom mics, overheads, room mics, and mono room mics. The way I'm sending these to the console is I'm routing these two kicks together to channel 1 in my console right here, channel 1. I'm taking the two snares, right, snare top, snare bottom, again sending them to channel 2. Hi-hat and overheads are being sent to channel 5 and 6, and room mics are sent to channel 7 and 8. And we have the toms that we're sending to channels 3 and 4 in the console. Yes, I have some gates that I've already placed just to clean up the sound a little bit for the kick and the snare and the toms. There's some gating happening for them just to clean up the sound. If you'd like to learn more about gates, leave me a comment and we can do a video on this later. We have a trigger for the snare to blend some samples. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. We can definitely make a video about triggering and how I use it. I have no EQ, no compression going on in Pro Tools. So let's hear what that sounds like. So I think that sounds great, but I feel like we definitely can improve the sound with some EQ and some compression. Let's start with the kick and the snare and bring the overheads and see how we can combine these very important components. I think the overhead is one of the most important components in mixing drums and recording drums because they capture the image of the kit, makes it sound very realistic compared to just the closed mics. The closed mics are good for the punch. So let's hear that. Let's start EQing. So I'm adding some compression with the inserts. I'm adding the X-Rack compressor. Getting some compression on the kick. I'm gonna go check the X-Rack to see how that compression is going. I think we can EQ the room mics to get them a little bit brighter. They sound a little bit too dark. gonna add some compression for that energy on the room mics. Let's see if we can compress with the SSL X rack. The overheads are now sounding a little bit too dark as well, so let's fix that. And the hi-hat, it's coming, I think, a little too loud, so I'm just gonna lower the hi-hat in here. I just want it to blend a little bit better with the overheads. I think that's great. Let's find a part with the toms just to hear that. Let's hear the toms. So we're adding some top and some bottom on the toms just to make them sound more less dark, a little bit more bright. But at the same time, we can enhance the low end and add some more energy in the toms in the low end. Let's compress them a bit with the X-Rack compressor. Cool thing I like about the X-Rack is the punch that you get, the snap that you get with the drums, especially when you're mixing any percussive element. I think the SSL channel compressor works really well for that kind of stuff. Anything percussive can get some enhancements in terms of the punch that you get. I think that's great. Let's now play from beginning part. I think so far it's sounding pretty good. Let's compare removing all the EQ and compression from the console and hear before and after. think that's good. We're able to hear before and after. Have we done so far? Kick, adding a little bit of top, a little bit of bottom, removing some of the low mids that are causing the kick to sound a little bit muddy, but adding low end energy with a bell curve and a shelf on the top. The snare track, we're adding some nice top from the SSL EQ, and again, I always like to add some body to the snare just to make it sound bigger in the low end, like in the low mids. So I'm adding a shelf in the lows at around 200 hertz. The toms, usually I like to get them a little bit brighter so they cut through the mix better. Obviously, this is when we start adding a lot of other elements like guitars, bass, and keys. It starts taking space, so we want those toms to cut through the mix. I'm adding top, I'm adding 5K, 8K, and I'm adding a little bit of 70, 80 hertz shelf just to again add more energy on the bottom. The overheads, I'm cutting with the shelf a little bit of the low mids, starting from 220 hertz down, maybe about 2 or 3 dBs that I'm removing as a shelf. I'm adding some top just for brightness and some 2K for making the cymbals cut through the mix a little bit better. The room mics, they tend to be really dark, so I like to add some top. Again, 8K, adding some 5K, bell curve, subtle, just to get a little nicer top. And then the low mids had to get some reduction. Actually, the low mids starting at 200 hertz or so, we have to reduce a little bit with the shelf because they tend, room mics tend to have a lot of low end. It's not always the case, but they tend to have a lot of bottom, and we need to make them sound brighter. So let's hear the room mics before and after. Yeah, so too dark, can't cut through the mix without EQ. So now, I think the room mic adds really nice ambience to the sound. It makes it sound big. I like how it sounds. But if we want to add reverb, we could certainly add some plate reverb on the snare and see how that sounds like. And the reverb we're using, one of my favorite ones, the EMT-140. We're adding about 2 milliseconds of tail in the reverb. I think it sounds great. Obviously, this is depending on the mix. The mix might need some reverb, depending on what kind of mix we're dealing with. Maybe it doesn't need any reverb. Maybe you want more natural sounding drums, more organic. Then maybe you don't need a super big plate. Again, for this track, so you can see here, I'm sending to the reverb the snare on the toms, because a lot of the times when you're sending, the toms might sound too dry compared to the snare, and it makes it sound a little bit weird. It sounds like they're not in the same space. So we're trying to make sure that they sound like they're in the same space, and for that I like to add the reverb to the snare, reverb to the toms, but usually I just add less reverb to the toms. It's just to add space, just to feel like they are in the same space, but way less reverb than the snare, which I like to have that tail in the snare. When the snare hits, I like to hear that tail that makes it sound big. The toms don't need as much tail, I feel, but they still want to be in the same place as the overall drums, especially the snare. So that's how I mix drums. Please leave me a comment. Anything that I missed, anything that you want to ask me, make sure to ask questions in the comments. Feel free to subscribe to my channel. Again, more content coming soon. Thanks for watching.